In this video, we will tackle about the nature of human language.
First, we will talk about human language as a social phenomenon. Language is a set of conventional communicative signals used by humans for communication in a community. Second, language in this sense is a position of a social group. Third, we are not born with an instinct to learn a particular language like Hindi, Tamil, English, Russian, Chinese, French, or etc. We learn a language as a member of a society which is using that language, or because we want to understand that society or to be understood by that speech community. In order for us to survive, a language must be used in any society. And lastly, it can fully be described only if we know all about the people who are involved in it, their personalities, their beliefs, attitude, knowledge of the world, and relationship to each other, their social status, and many more. Some of us may think that after years of intensive tuition, some chimpanzees and bonobos have been able to acquire a rudimentary sign language. But still, the skills of these exceptional cases have not come close to those of a typical human toddler, who will spontaneously use the generative power of language to express thoughts and ideas about present, past, and also the future. Next up is linguistic and human language. Okay, when language is treated as a human behavior, a linguist is a set of study and describe how physical movement and acts are involved into it, how people acquire and learn languages, how human cognitive system work behind the comprehension and production of speech sound. We have here a well-known linguist, which is Edward Safir, and his own definition about human language. According to him, language is purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions, and desires by means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. There are two terms in definition that call for destruction: human and non-instinctive. Language, as Safir rightly said, is human. Only humans possess language, and all normal humans uniformly possess it. Animals do have a communication system, but it is not a developed system. That is why language is said to be species-specific and species-uniform. Also, language does not pass from a parent to a child. In this sense, it is non-instinctive. A child has to learn language, and he or she learns the language of the society she is placed in. The next linguist is Noam Chomsky. So he also defined human language, but here in the screen is one of his famous quotes. But we will not focus on that. We will proceed to our definition, or his definition about human language. He said that a language is a set of finite or infinite of sentence, each finite in length and constructed out of a finite set of elements. Chomsky meant to convey that each sentence has a structure. Human brain is competent enough to construct different sentences from out of the limited set of sound symbols belonging to a particular language. Human brain is so productive that a child can, at any time, produce a sentence that has never been said or heard earlier. We also have a linguist with the same view of language, and for just like Wardo, for him, a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols used for human communication, and for Black and Trade, a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates. You may have noticed that Almost all the above mentioned definitions prominently point out that language is a system, sound joined to form words according to a system. Although initially the formation of words, as said earlier, is only arbitrary, convention makes them parts of a system. Words too joined to form sentence according to the system. So in this sense, language is said to be a system of systems. Language is undoubtedly a kind of means of communication among human beings. It consists primarily of vocal sounds. It is articulatory, systematic, symbolic, and of course, arbitrary. Evolution of human language. After only a few years, a typical infant may grasp a huge vocabulary of words, can use grammatical rules to combine them into a potentially limitless number of meaningful utterances, communicate this with rapid and precise coordination of speech muscles, and it is similarly adept of decoding the utterances of others. Human children have unique and highly mysterious ability to acquire proficient speech and language skills without the need to be formally taught. The linguistic capacity that develops naturally in every normal human being appears to be best understood in functional rather than literal anatomical terms. Human language progress and growth. Here, all mentally healthy children learn to speak the language that they are exposed to within the first few years of their lives. We are all familiar with how difficult it is to learn a foreign language as an adult or even as a teenager. Yet, children acquire the same languages flawlessly with no conscious effort. We do not work to learn our first language, right? It just happens despite how very complex languages are. This only suggests that we are programmed for the task. It is generally assumed that a grown-up knowledge of her language results from simple learning or imitation, but we can't ignore that we know more than we learn. We can conclude, or we already know, that human language is structurally complex. Human language is far more structurally complex than animal communication. For example, has 44 sounds that join in different groups to form thousands of words. These words can be arranged into millions of sets to frame different sentences. Each sentence has its own internal structure. There is no such structural complexity in a lamb's bleating or a monkey's cry. Do you agree that language has both linguistic and communicative competence? Of course, language has both linguistic and communicative competence. So, a language is an abstract set of psychological principles and sociological considerations that constitute a person's competence as a speaker in a given situation. Language is not just verbal behavior. It is a system of rules establishing correlations between meaning and sound sequences. In brief, a language is a code which is different from the act of encoding. It is a speaker's linguistic competence rather than his linguistic performance. But mere linguistic competence is not enough for communication. It has to be coupled with communicative competence.
That's our lesson for today. Thank you for watching.